watching Updates at Noon with me, Shuhaida Arifin. Our top stories today. Budget 2023, which will be presented again, will cater every community. Strategies are being drafted to address cost of living issues. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim has assured that Budget 2023, which will be presented again next month, will meet the needs of every class of people and community group. Datuk Seri Anwar, who's also Finance Minister, said the contents of Budget 2023 are still being fine-tuned, but the government under his administration will not sideline any party. He said under his administration, the M40 will not be marginalised and the B40 is important, but attention will also be on the M40. The Premier said this to the Malaysian media at the end of a 2-day visit in Brunei. Also present was Sarawak Premier Tan Sri Abang Johari Openg, Sabah Chief Minister Datuk Seri Haji Jinor and Foreign Minister Datuk Seri Dr. Zamri Abdul Kadir. Budget 2023 will be presented again in Parliament on 24th February. Datuk Seri Anwar was previously reported as saying that Budget 2023 that will be presented again will not be bound by what was presented by the previous government. However, he said the recommendations made in the previous budget will still be taken into account in the new Budget 2023 figures. The government is devising a new strategy to deal with the cost of living issue, including creating a food supply chain domestically through encouraging agriculture activities to grow raw materials that can replace imported products such as chili. Economy Minister Rafizi Ramli said the Ministry of Economy, the Ministry of Domestic Trade and Cost of Living (KPDN), the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security are among the government agencies that are currently devising a strategy to address the cost of living issue. He said in establishing the food supply chain, the government will also involve the poor and the hardcore poor as entrepreneurs or growers of raw materials. Rafizi said the government will also collaborate with government-linked companies GLCs as well as Iskandar Malaysia, the East Coast Economic Region ECER and the Northern Corridor Economic Region NCER to expand their ongoing food value chain related projects.
Kementerian Ekonomi juga telah pun duduk berbincang dengan beberapa GLC dan kita sedang menunggu mereka kembali dengan beberapa cadangan pelaburan berimpak tinggi dalam sektor-sektor makanan, terutamanya yang bersifat huluan. Sebab kita tahu masalah kita ialah selalunya di investment at the upstream end of the value chain itu yang mahal. Kerana nak buat itu perlukan teknologi, dia perlukan kepakaran.
In the meantime, Rafizi said the government hopes that when issues involving the food supply chain are resolved, it will be reflected in the final price paid by consumers. The Ministry of Human Resources has issued a warning to employers nationwide to ensure that the accommodation of foreign workers is always comfortable and not like a buffalo or cattle pen. Its Minister V. Sivakumar said the conditions of foreign workers' accommodation, which are not in compliance with the stipulated conditions, will endanger workers, particularly in the event of the COVID-19 pandemic and unwanted disasters. He said this after a special operation for the enforcement of the Workers' Minimum Standards of Housing and Amenities Act 1990, Act 446, at the 3 wood and rubber products factories in Jalan Kapar, Klang yesterday. He also added that it had been found that among non-complying offences committed by employers were the failure to provide mattresses, poor cooking space and cramped rooms. Meanwhile, he said the owners of the 3 factories will be charged as soon as the investigation papers are complete and ready. He said the 3 factories operate with a foreign workforce of 426 people from Nepal, Bangladesh and Myanmar. When asked about amendments to the existing law, he said that the law was sufficient to ensure that employers take appropriate action. The minister added that they will monitor more frequently from now on to ensure that incoming foreign workers get a good placement and are given due attention by employers. A total of 20 selected passport issuing offices nationwide, apart from the Urban Transformation Centres UTC, will operate 7 days a week starting Friday in efforts to overcome congestion at immigration counters. Home Minister Datuk Seri Saifuddin Nasution Ismail said in addition, passport printing machines will also be added in offices with high visitor rates. Elaborating further on the matter through a statement release, Datuk Seri Saifuddin said the Kuala Lumpur Airport KLIA Passport Office will also operate as a passport issuing office for urgent and emergency cases other than normal applications. According to Datuk Seri Saifuddin, all the initial steps to overcome congestion at immigration counters were decided at a special meeting yesterday. Regarding the issue of congestion involving foreign visitors at KLIA, the Home Minister said it was caused by the arrival of about 20 to 26 planes simultaneously within a time interval of between 5 and 10 minutes during peak hours. He said that checks based on established procedures to ensure only genuine foreign tourists who meet the social visit pass conditions are allowed to enter is among factors for congestion. With regards to that, he said the government will study the prospect of expanding the use of automatic gates, AutoGate, to visitors from 10 low-risk countries, besides creating 2 quick response team QRT groups, which begin operations on 1st February to assist officers at the counters during peak hours. There has been a reduction in the rate of offences involving motorcyclists in the capital during the 4 days of the operation code-named Motosikal Khas, held in conjunction with the Chinese New Year festive period compared to the one held last year. Kuala Lumpur Road Transport Department JPJ Director Muhammad Zaki Ismail said the biggest drop involved offences such as not having a driving licence or expired motor vehicle licences. Muhammad Zaki said over the 4 days, a total of 236 summonses were issued to those who did not have a driver's license, compared to 1,130 in the same period last year. Meanwhile, 251 summonses were issued due to expired motor vehicle license, compared to 1,214 last year. He said the decrease showed that motorcyclists in Kuala Lumpur have a high awareness of traffic laws, and it is something that deserves praise. The Kuala Lumpur JPJ Director said this after observing the operation at the Sungai Besi Toll Plaza last night. Commenting on the operation, Muhammad Zaki said his party issued 164 summonses for various offences as well as several notices. He said the operation involved a total of personnel from Kuala Lumpur JPJ and 3 other agencies, namely the National Anti-Drug Agency, the Department of Environment and the Immigration Department. Coming up in our foreign segment, US joins Germany in sending battle tanks to Ukraine. Police in the Indian capital detained more than a dozen students ahead of a BBC documentary screening about Prime Minister Narendra Modi that the government has dismissed as propaganda. The Students' Federation of India, SFI, plans to show the documentary India, the Modi Question, in every Indian state, its General Secretary told Reuters. A warning was issued by the Jamia Millia Islamia University in New Delhi against unapproved student gatherings ahead of SFI's scheduled screening of the BBC documentary yesterday, NDTV reported. Police then detained more than a dozen students there about an hour ahead of the screening, according to the broadcaster. The Delhi police did not immediately confirm if students were detained, but said there was heavy deployment of police and security forces in riot control gear at the university. The deployment was to maintain law and order, both because of the screening and India's Republic Day on 26 January. Modi's government has labelled the documentary, which questions his leadership during riots in his home state of Gujarat in 2002, as a propaganda piece and blocked its airing. It has also barred the sharing of any clips on social media in India. Critics accuse Modi of failing to protect Muslims, but the Indian Premier denies the allegations, and a Supreme Court-ordered investigation found no evidence to prosecute him. The BBC has said the documentary was rigorously researched and involved a wide range of voices and opinions, including responses from people in Modi's Hindu nationalist Berita Janata Party. The UN aid chief said that the humanitarian community was speaking with Taliban officials to try and gain further exemptions and written guidelines to allow some female aid workers to operate despite a ban on women NGO staff. Taliban authorities ordered NGOs, many of whom carried out operations for the United Nations, to stop most female staff working last month. UN Under-Secretary-General for Humanitarian Affairs Martin Griffiths said some exemptions to the ban had been granted in health and education, and they were hearing signs of a possible exemption in agriculture. But he said much more was needed, with nutrition and water and sanitation services as a priority to prevent severe illnesses and malnutrition during the country's severe humanitarian crisis. He said based on discussions with authorities in recent days, UN and humanitarian agencies were hopeful they would create a set of written guidelines to allow NGOs to operate with female staff in more areas with certainty in coming weeks.
And I think the next few weeks are absolutely crucial to see if we can do, in the way the humanitarian community says it, if we can stay and deliver.
However, Griffith cautioned that the final outcome was still not certain. Over 300 personnel responded to a deadly extra alarm fire that stretched across several floors of a Chicago high-rise yesterday. Chicago Fire Commissioner Annette Nance Holt said one person is dead and 8 others were taken to area hospitals, including 1 firefighter, but all in stable condition. Footage from outside the building shot minutes after the fire began. The United States announced it will supply Ukraine with 31 advanced M1 Abrams tanks worth $400 million in a matter of months, a decision that helped break a diplomatic logjam with Germany over how best to help Kiev in its war against Russia. President Joe Biden announced the decision at the White House and thanked Germany for its decision to supply Ukraine with Leopard 2 tanks.
So, the United States, standing shoulder to shoulder with allies and partners, is going to continue to do all we can to support Ukraine. Putin expected Europe and the United States to weaken our resolve. He expected our support for Ukraine to crumble with time. He was wrong.
The United States had been cool to the idea of deploying the difficult-to-maintain Abrams tanks, but had to change tack in order to persuade Germany to send its more easily used Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. The decisions by Washington and Berlin come as the Western allies help Ukraine prepare for a possible spring counteroffensive to try to drive Russia out of territory it has seized. Members of the Ukrainian military will be trained on using the Abrams in a yet-to-be-determined location. While a highly sophisticated and expensive weapon, the Abrams is difficult to maintain and provides a logistical resupply challenge because it runs on jet fuel. Spain opened a terror probe after a man wielding a bladed weapon stormed 2 churches in southern Spain, killing 1 and wounding another person. The probe will be led by a judge from the Audiencia Nacional, Spain's top criminal court, which handles terror-related cases. Police sources said a church official was killed and a priest injured during the incident. An Interior Ministry statement said just after 7 p.m. local time, a man entered the church of San Isidro in Algeciras, where he attacked the priest, leaving him seriously wounded. Subsequently, he entered the church of Nuestra Senora de la Palma, in which, after causing damages, he attacked the church official. The church official managed to get out of the church but was caught by the attacker outside and sustained mortal injuries. Moments later, the suspect was disarmed and arrested and is currently in police custody. The ministry also said the facts are being investigated and analysed, but it is not yet possible to determine the nature of the attack. A police source said the assailant was wearing a long robe and had shouted something as he carried out the attack. At least 2 people were killed and 7 wounded in a knife attack on a regional train in northern Germany yesterday, in which fellow passengers overpowered the alleged assailant. A police spokesman said the stabbing occurred on a train travelling between the cities of Hamburg and Kiel, adding that 3 of the wounded had serious injuries. The 33-year-old suspect was detained at the railway station in the town of Brookstedt and treated in hospital for minor injuries. Witnesses were able to restrain the suspect immediately after the attack until police arrived at the station. Police and emergency workers established a wide security perimeter around the station while helicopters circled overhead. Germany's national rail company Deutsche Bahn said some trains on the line between Hamburg and Kiel had been cancelled to allow police to conduct their investigation. The police spokesman meanwhile said the investigation into a motive was focused on all directions, including possible extremism or psychological problems on the part of the assailant. Federal Interior Ministry Nancy Faeser called the attack shocking news and said her thoughts were with the victims of the terrible act and their families. Germany has been hit by several deadly knife attacks in recent years, some carried out by people suffering serious psychological problems. The European Court of Human Rights said cases brought by Ukraine and the Netherlands against Russia over alleged human rights violations in the breakaway Luhansk and Donetsk regions of Ukraine and the shooting down of flight MH17 were admissible. The decision does not rule on the merits of the cases, but it does show the Strasbourg-based court considers Russia can be held liable for rights violations in the separatist regions. Among other things, the court found that areas in eastern Ukraine in separatist hands were from 11th May 2014 and up to at least 26 January 2022 under the jurisdiction of the Russian Federation. The cases will now move on to the merits stage, expected to take another 1 to 2 years before a final decision is issued. The court's decision opens the doors to at least 3 other cases by the Ukrainian state against Russia, as well as thousands of individual cases which had been put on hold pending the decision on jurisdiction. The court's finding that Moscow did control pro-Russian forces in Ukraine mirrors a Dutch court ruling last November that Moscow had overall control over the forces of the Donetsk People's Republic in eastern Ukraine from mid-May 2014. Dutch judges handed down life sentences in absentia to 2 Russian men and a Ukrainian man for their role in the downing of flight MH17 with the loss of 298 passengers and crew. Coming up in sports, Rashford strikes as the Red Devils outclass Forest. The Speedy Tigers, who will meet South Africa for the 9th to 16 classification playoff in the 2023 World Cup campaign today, have been urged to not be swayed by the success of defeating the same opposition in Ipoh Perak last year. National hockey coach A. Aruse Baraj said that when competing on the bigger World Cup stage, the stakes for win will certainly be higher. He said the players cannot use the 7-2 victory in Ipoh as a yardstick when playing today, adding that the squad needs to keep up to speed.
Walaupun kita menewaskan pasukan South Africa di Piala Sultan Azlan Shah Cup dengan jaringan 7-2, ia tidak menunjukkan sebarang impact sebab pemain-pemain pun berlainan, penjaga gol berlainan, dan di sini pula kita datang Piala Dunia is always a different tournament, World Cup once in 4 years, so mentality plays more berbeza. So besok kita masih kena bekerja keras, kita kena buat fundamentals kita dengan betul, dan kemahuan dan juga kepercayaan diri untuk menang besok amat penting.
He also said that the Speedy Tigers at the same time need to cultivate a good mindset in addition to placing a strong will and belief in carving another victory over South Africa. In the 2022 Sultan Azlan Shah Cup tournament at home in November last year, Malaysia defeated South Africa 7-2 in the group stage. Ahead of today's clash in Rourkela in India, Malaysia have an advantage on paper based on their 9th world ranking, while South Africa are ranked at 15th. Kuala Lumpur City FC defender Giancarlo Gallifuoco is optimistic that the City Boys team will finish in the top 3 tier when the 2023 Super League season ends. He said finishing in that position is important to push for a spot in the Asian Football Confederation AFC Cup after having emerged as the runners-up following a 0-3 loss in the final to Omani club Al-Sib last October.
Now, for the first time ever, we have a bigger team, we have more firepower, we have more cover, and I think realistically we want to improve on that top 6. So for me, what I've been saying to the boys and Kenny, our motivation is we want AFC again.
While Johor Darul Takzim is expected to dominate the league next season, the Australian-born player also believes Sabah FC and Kedah Darul Aman FC will be among the teams to look out for in the new season. In the meantime, KL City midfielder Kenny Palraj said the arrival of Brazilian-born striker Helison Cayon to their squad will definitely add more firepower to the strike force and ultimately help the team to finish at least among the top 4 as well as reach the finals in every competition that they participate.
City merobek kebutuhan rumah untuk menempuh.
Saya personally saya harap untuk top 4. So saya tak nak terlebih, apa yang kalau kita buat lebih baik adalah bagus. Bagi saya base is top 4 lah.
Marcus Rashford continued his fine season as he scored again to help Manchester United beat Nottingham Forest 3-0 in the League Cup semi-final first leg early today. United came into the contest having suffered their first defeat since November in all competitions at Arsenal on Sunday and had lost also their last 3 cup semi-finals. England for Rashford's superb solo effort after 6 minutes, dancing past defenders before firing home, took him to 18 goals in all competitions this season. Only Manchester City's Erling Haaland has more for a Premier League club in 2022 to 2023. Forest thought they had quickly restored parity in the City ground after catching United out on the counter, but Sam Surridge's effort was ruled out for offside following a VAR review. United capitalised on the reprieve by doubling the lead just before half-time on lone striker Wout Weghorst netting his first goal since joining the club after Anthony's shot had been well saved. The second goal killed off Forest's hopes of a comeback, and Bruno Fernandes added a late third to keep United well on course to win their first trophy since 2017. Ousmane Dembele's second half strike gave Barcelona a 1-0 win over 10-man Real Sociedad in their Copa del Rey quarter-final today, stretching their unbeaten streak to 12 games. Real Sociedad came into the match on the back of 9 consecutive wins in all competitions and almost scored in the 29th minute when Japanese youngster Take Kubo's strike hit the bar. But their hopes of inflicting a surprise defeat on Barca were hit when forward Bryce Mendes was shown a straight red card in the 40th minute for a wild challenge on Sergio Busquets. Barcelona were the better side for most of the match after, but only scored once, thanks to a brilliant counter-attack by Dembele in the 52nd minute. The electric winger ran through the right channel after receiving a perfectly placed long pass from his France teammate Jules Koundé and lashed an unstoppable right foot strike into the top corner. After Xavi volleyed against the crossbar from a great cross by Dembele in the 68th minute, Sociedad made a late push and could have scored on at least 3 occasions, with Barca keeper Marc-Andre ter Stegen making a string of saves to secure the win. Borussia Dortmund substitute Gio Reyna tapped in a stoppage time goal to give his team a 2-1 victory at Main 05 early today and lift them back into 5th place in the Bundesliga. World Cup bronze medalist Croatia were drawn against host the Netherlands in the Nations League semi-finals in June, while Italy and Spain will reprise in the rivalry in the competition in the other semi. The 4 countries were winners of their respective League A group last year and compete in the mini-tournament in mid-year to decide the 2022-2023 title. Yesterday's draw, conducted at UEFA headquarters in Switzerland, has the Dutch hosting the Croats in Rotterdam on 14 June, with Italy and Spain clashing in Enschede next day. The winners advanced to the final in Rotterdam on 18 June, with the third playoff earlier the same day in Enschede. Spain were runners-up to France in the last edition in 2021. First elimination host Italy in their semi-final with a Ferran Torres double in a 2-1 victory in Milan. Italy and the Netherlands also returned for a second appearance at the finals, while this is Croatia's first time. The Italians were third in 2021, while the Dutch runners-up in the inaugural event in Portugal in 2019. The Nations League is a biennial competition contested by all European countries who are divided into 4-tier league structure. And that wraps up today's edition of Updates at Noon. In our top story, Budget 2023, which will be presented again, will cater to every community. Till then, I'm Shuhaida Arifin. Thank you for watching.